All right, lock and load, everyone. We're diving deep into MCDP 6 today. That's the Marine Corps Doctrine on Command and Control.
Yeah, think of this like your high-level brief.
Getting you right into the core of how Marines fight and win. And not just like the generals, we're talking all levels.
From those fire teams all the way up to the MEFs.
We're going to be using MCDP 6's fictional scenario, Operation Verbal Image, to really see how this stuff plays out. But before we get into all that,
Right, let's get that foundation set.
what's the one key message MCDP 6 wants to hammer home?
It's really emphasizing that effective command and control is everyone's responsibility, not just the senior commanders.
Yeah, so it's not just a top-down approach anymore.
It's much more distributed, which makes sense when you look at how warfare is changing.
So why is that shift so critical on today's battlefields? What's going on?
I mean, think about it. Modern warfare, it's fast, it's unpredictable. You can't rely on these old school hierarchies.
And slow communication chains.
You just can't. Marines at every level have to be empowered to make decisions, seize those opportunities, adapt to a situation that's constantly changing. I mean, imagine if a squad leader had to wait for orders from a battalion commander.
Who's miles away?
Every time they encounter an enemy position. I mean, by that point, it's too late.
So it's about pushing decision-making down as far as you can.
Right. To the lowest level possible, give them the power to act.
To those closest to the action.
They're the ones who have to make those split-second decisions.
Which brings us to mission command and control.
Absolutely. MCDP 6 really emphasizes that.
Big time.
And it's all about guiding your Marines, giving them the intent, the mission.
Not micromanaging their every move.
Exactly. It's more like, think of a jazz ensemble.
Okay, I like this.
You have the conductor sets the tempo and the overall theme, but every musician, they have the freedom to improvise, you know?
To bring in their own skills.
Yeah, make it their own.
And that really highlights the difference we see in Operation Verbal Image.
Right.
You've got Lieutenant Colonel Hewson
Hyper-focused on data points.
trying to control everything from his little command post, missing the big picture,
Completely. Then you have Captain Takashima and Gunnery Sergeant Hernandez.
who are empowered by their commander's intent.
They can adjust on the fly, even when the enemy does the unexpected.
They understood the why behind the mission.
And that's crucial.
So when the initial plan fell apart, they could adapt, take the initiative, and actually succeed.
Right, and that's a prime example of why mission command is so important.
You need that agility.
You have to be able to respond when things are uncertain.
So MCDP 6 is saying, let's be more flexible, more adaptable.
Yeah.
Where Marines at all levels can think critically and act decisively. What are the key ingredients to make that actually work?
Well, there's a few, and they're all interconnected.
Sure.
First, you have that low-level initiative.
Right. MCDP 6 really drives that home.
You need to empower those closest to the situation. They have to be able to act without waiting for explicit orders.
I can see how that's so important in a fast-moving fight. Do we have real-world examples of that in action?
Oh, absolutely. Think back to Below Wood in World War I.
Classic.
You have Marines there, completely outnumbered.
Facing a tough German offensive.
But they held their ground. Take Gunnery Sergeant John Quick.
What a name.
He took the initiative, leading small units, repulsing those enemy attacks.
Wow.
Quick. And countless other Marines, they acted decisively, without those specific orders.
And that was critical to the victory at Belleau Wood.
It really showcased the power of low-level initiative, that fighting spirit.
So that shows how individual Marines, empowered to act,
Can really shift the outcome of a battle.
yeah, powerful stuff. So low-level initiative is key.
Yep.
What else is needed to make this decentralized approach work?
The commander's intent is paramount. MCDP 6 is very clear on that.
You got to communicate the why.
Absolutely, the why behind the what.
Yeah.
Because plans change in war constantly.
So it's not just about giving orders, it's about explaining the purpose, the big picture.
So everyone's on the same page.
Strategically.
Exactly. When Marines know why they're doing something, they can make good decisions on the fly.
Even when they can't talk to higher headquarters.
Which is critical in a lot of situations.
Captain Takashima and Gunnery Sergeant Hernandez, they knew why they were there.
They could make adjustments when the plan went out the window.
And this whole system, it really hinges on trust. Right?
Up and down the chain of command.
Mutual trust.
MCDP 6 really makes that clear. Trust is fundamental to effective command and control.
Senior leaders have to trust their subordinates to make sound judgments.
And those subordinates have to trust their leaders to have their back.
To give them the resources they need to win.
It's a cycle, you know?
Trust enables initiative.
And successful initiative reinforces that trust.
It builds a more cohesive, more effective fighting force.
Absolutely.
But MCDP 6 doesn't stop at just explicitly stated orders and intent.
Right.
It also talks about this idea of implicit understanding.
Which is kind of a unique Marine Corps thing.
Yeah, it feels that way.
It really is part of the ethos.
Built through training, shared experiences, those common values.
Allows for a level of communication that goes beyond words.
Like when Captain Nuts and Captain Takashima in Operation Verbal Image,
Right.
former classmates from Expeditionary Warfare School.
They instantly get each other.
They understand each other's intentions. They coordinate seamlessly, even in all the chaos.
They didn't need lengthy explanations or formal orders because they had that shared background.
That's implicit understanding in action.
It enables rapid decision-making,
Coordinated action.
especially in those chaotic environments.
It's a huge force multiplier for the Marine Corps.
You got it.
Okay, so we've got low-level initiative,
Clear commander's intent.
mutual trust, and implicit understanding.
Yeah, all crucial elements.
What else does MCDP 6 highlight as essential for command and control?
Well, it addresses a really big challenge today, information management.
With all the data flying around.
It acknowledges the information overload problem. Just having mountains of data isn't enough.
You need to turn it into actionable knowledge.
Exactly.
It lays out this information hierarchy.
Starting with the raw data.
Processing it into usable information, then turning that into knowledge.
And ultimately, you reach understanding.
And that's the goal.
Understanding is key. You have to make sense of the information.
See the enemy's weaknesses, predict their next move.
Exactly.
And in Operation Verbal Image, we see this with Corporal Davis.
In the Tactical Air Command Center.
Sifting through mountains of data to find the critical pieces of information.
Right, and you have Master Sergeant Tomlinson,
The intelligence chief.
cautioning against too much reliance on technology without human judgment and understanding.
It's a good reminder that even with all the fancy technology, human judgment is still vital.
We can't let computers do our thinking for us.
Marines need to be trained to analyze, synthesize, and make sense of the information they receive.
To think critically,
So we're using technology to enhance our understanding.
not replace it.
And that leads to another key element that MCDP 6 emphasizes. Visualizing the battlefield.
Absolutely critical.
Now, why is that so important? We've got all this data, all these reports coming in. Why focus on visualization?
Well, think about how we as humans process information.
Yeah.
We grasp visuals much faster than text or numbers.
Right, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Images help us understand complex situations, see patterns, and communicate more effectively.
So you're creating a mental map,
A clear picture of what's happening.
which helps you make faster, more informed decisions.
Precisely. MCDP 6 wants Marines to develop strong visualization skills.
Using maps, symbols, terrain models, even those fancy digital displays to really get a feel for the battle space.
It allows them to predict enemy actions.
Identify opportunities and coordinate their movements more effectively.
Like playing 3D chess.
Where you understand how all the pieces are moving and anticipate the next few moves.
Powerful skill for any Marine.
And then we come to another critical element in MCDP 6.
The idea of planning,
Not as a rigid script.
but as a continuous learning process,
So you're prepared.
but not paralyzed by sticking to a preset plan.
Exactly. Because war rarely goes according to plan.
Right, you need flexibility, adaptability, the ability to adjust to those changing circumstances.
And we see this in Operation Verbal Image.
Yeah, you have Major General Bishop.
With that flexible planning style, always ready to adjust based on new information.
Compared to Lieutenant Colonel Hewson,
Who's clinging to his preset plans even when they're clearly not relevant anymore.
it's a great example of how clinging to outdated plans can be detrimental.
You have to adapt.
Learn as you go.
Essential for success in modern warfare.
Absolutely.
So MCDP 6 is saying plan, but be ready for things to change.
Have to be.
That's a valuable insight
Not just for the military.
for any complex endeavor.
It's finding that balance between preparation and flexibility.
Be ready to adjust course without losing sight of the goal.
Which brings us to a really important question. With all this emphasis on decentralized decision-making, all this adaptability, how do we make sure the Marine Corps can still act as one?
Right. How do we balance that individual initiative with the commander's intent?
Big question. And MCDP 6 tackles it head-on, looking at the nuts and bolts of the command and control structure.
Okay, break it down.
4 key elements: procedures, organization, technology, and maybe most importantly, leadership. And it acknowledges that procedures, they have their place. Especially for routine stuff, you need that efficiency, consistency.
So procedures are good, but...
But you can't become a slave to them.
Right, especially when things are changing rapidly.
Procedures should be guidelines, not handcuffs.
They should help you, not hold you back.
Exactly. And if we go back to Operation Verbal Image...
Lieutenant Colonel Houston?
Classic example. So focused on following the procedure.
He couldn't adapt to the situation.
Led to all kinds of frustration and delays.
So his inflexibility shows the danger of treating procedures like they're written in stone.
You gotta know when to follow them and when to deviate.
When the mission demands it.
And that's where good judgment comes in, understanding the commander's intent. And that adaptability, it applies to how we organize our forces, too.
Right, the next element of the command and control structure.
MCDP 6 stresses task organization. Structure units to match the mission, the environment.
So you're not stuck with rigid organizational charts.
You build the team for the specific task.
What's that look like? You give me an example.
Sure. Say you need a small mobile force to conduct a raid. You might combine guys from the infantry, recon, combat engineers. You form a task force just for that mission.
Building the team with the right skills.
Instead of forcing a square peg into a round hole, yeah.
But how do we keep all this flexibility from turning into chaos?
Well, MCDP 6 provides some guiding principles. First, you got to maintain reasonable spans of control.
Meaning?
Leaders can't be overwhelmed with too many subordinates. If you have too many people reporting to you,
It's hard to communicate, make decisions.
it all breaks down. MCDP 6 highlights the importance of creating cohesive mission teams.
So it's not just assembling individuals, it's building a unit that can work together.
Even under pressure, they got to be tight.
I get it. But too much restructuring, constantly shifting things around,
That can cause confusion.
undermine effectiveness.
Exactly. Finding that balance is key. And MCDP 6 emphasizes clear command relationships.
Even within these task-organized units.
Everyone needs to know who's in charge, who they report to.
Responsibilities, even in a non-standard structure.
Keeps things ordered, ensures coordination.
So flexibility doesn't mean ditching clear lines of authority.
You got to have accountability.
Effective communication.
MCDP 6 also has some interesting things to say about staffs.
Oh yeah,
It acknowledges that big staffs can be helpful for planning, analysis,
but they can get slow and bogged down.
information overload.
Too much bureaucracy.
The document leans towards smaller, agile staffs.
Makes sense. Aligns with what we've been talking about.
Speed, agility, efficiency.
Not always bigger is better.
Sometimes leaner is meaner.
And that brings us to technology.
The final element of the support structure.
All the computers, networks, sensors, the high-tech stuff.
MCDP 6 recognizes how vital that is.
For gathering information, communicating, making decisions.
But it also gives a warning.
Don't become too reliant on technology.
It's a double-edged sword.
Can enhance your capabilities, but also create vulnerabilities.
If you depend on it too much.
Technology can fail, get disrupted, even be used against you.
And most importantly, technology should never replace human judgment.
That's a good point.
It's a tool.
For skilled Marines to use, not a replacement.
Exactly.
So we're empowering Marines with technology.
Not replacing them with it.
MCDP 6 highlights a few key principles for using technology effectively.
One is user-friendliness. The equipment has to be intuitive, easy to use.
You don't want Marines struggling with complex interfaces when they're under pressure.
Trying to make split-second decisions.
Make the technology work for you.
Not create more obstacles.
What else?
Automate routine tasks. Free up Marines to focus on things that require human judgment, creativity.
Let the machines handle the data crunching.
Marines can focus on strategy, adaptation, leadership.
It's about finding the right balance.
Between human and machine.
Using technology to enhance, but keeping that human element front and center.
And that brings us back to leadership.
Probably the most important element.
MCDP 6 is clear on that. Leadership is what makes mission command work.
Inspiring Marines, fostering initiative, building that culture of trust and respect.
We talked about trust up and down the chain.
How do you build that trust actively? What kind of leadership does MCDP 6 advocate?
It talks about a persuasive, delegating style of leadership, empowering subordinates, giving them the freedom to make decisions.
Not the old do-as-I-say approach.
Exactly. You want leaders who can think for themselves, adapt, take initiative.
And that requires a shift in mindset.
How we train and develop leaders.
Leaders need to be able to communicate their intent clearly.
Make sure their Marines understand not just the what, but the why.
Foster a culture where Marines feel comfortable taking risks, making decisions, even making mistakes.
Because mistakes happen.
Especially in war, that's how you learn.
MCDP 6 actually encourages a bias towards tolerating mistakes of action rather than inaction.
You can't be paralyzed by the fear of failure,
Gotta encourage initiative.
even if it means things don't go perfectly,
You build that strong team,
where Marines support each other, trust each other, willing to take risks together.
knowing they have each other's backs.
MCDP 6 highlights the importance of that cohesion, that shared understanding.
Being able to function even when communication is disrupted, when things are chaotic.
That kind of team, it doesn't just appear overnight.
It takes work, shared experiences.
A commitment to building those bonds of trust.
MCDP 6 emphasizes training, education, developing a shared ethos,
Instilling those values, the skills, the mindset.
so they can operate effectively in this decentralized, adaptable force.
And that training has to go beyond lectures and theory.
Oh, absolutely. You need exercises that incorporate uncertainty, disruption, time pressure.
Push Marines out of their comfort zone.
Force them to adapt, make decisions under stress.
Learn from their mistakes in a safe environment.
Exactly. You create training that mirrors the complexity of combat.
You dull those mental muscles.
Hone those decision-making skills under pressure.
So we're talking procedures, organization, technology, and leadership.
All working together to create a system that enables Marines to operate in this complex, unpredictable world.
Empowering individuals, building trust, fostering adaptability, initiative.
All while staying aligned with the commander's intent and the mission.
Fascinating stuff. So after exploring all these concepts, the supporting structures, what are the big takeaways MCDP 6 wants us to walk away with?
Well, it's important to remember that MCDP 6, it doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Doesn't give you a magic formula.
War is messy, complex,
No easy solution.
but it gives you a way to think about things, some principles to guide your actions.
And it makes you confront some really tough questions.
It forces you to think about that tension between control and chaos.
Between centralized authority and giving people the freedom to act,
It's about finding that sweet spot.
where you empower Marines
At all levels.
to act decisively, but still make sure everyone is aligned.
With the commander's intent, the overall mission.
That balance seems so hard to get right.
Especially now, on today's battlefield, everything's so fluid, information's moving so fast.
MCDP 6 wants a more adaptable force.
A more responsive force.
But how do we make sure that all this flexibility doesn't lead to things falling apart?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
How to keep everyone rowing in the same direction?
Every Marine leader needs to think about this.
MCDP 6 offers some guidance,
It stresses shared values, clear communication.
building a culture of trust.
But ultimately, finding that balance, it's an ongoing challenge.
It's something you always have to work on.
You have to adapt, learn from what works and what doesn't.
So it's not just about learning techniques,
It's about a mindset
a way of thinking,
that embraces complexity, uncertainty.
and gives Marines the ability to make tough decisions under pressure,
Exactly. You need leaders who can operate in a decentralized environment.
who trust their Marines to make the right call.
And you need a force that can adapt, but also stay cohesive.
Act quickly, but stay unified.
That's the goal.
I'm struck by how MCDP 6 really wants you to think critically about everything.
It doesn't just give you the answers.
It challenges assumptions.
Makes you think.
Have a real conversation about leadership, about fighting, about winning.
In a complex world,
That's what makes it so valuable.
it's a living document, a starting point for discussion, a call to action.
It's about becoming a better leader, a better warfighter,
It's a roadmap for building a force that's ready for the 21st century.
a force that's defined by its ability to adapt, to learn, to overcome any obstacle.
So keep exploring MCDP 6.
Challenge assumptions.
Ask the tough questions.
Never stop looking for that balance.
Between control and chaos.
Because in the end, effective command and control, it's not about following rules,
It's about empowering Marines,
trusting their judgment,
leading with courage and conviction.
and a deep understanding of the mission.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into MCDP 6.
Until next time, keep thinking, keep learning, and keep leading.